All right, I'm going to share my screen so that everybody can see. Hopefully this works right. Okay. So as always, I'm not going to do this in presentation mode because that makes it where I can't see the chat. And I want to make sure I can see that. The other thing I'm worried about, let's see, is not seeing people as they come in. So hopefully I will be able to see that. Oh, hold on. What did I just do? Just did something. Okay. Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's been a while since we've all met together, unless you have participated in our Cohort 27 meetings, which we have been doing for quite some time, I think all the way back since November. I hope we haven't neglected everybody else too much. It's just been a lot going on, but we know summer is coming and we wanted to make sure that everybody was prepared and ready to go for summer training. So we put together this summer FY26 training. A lot of this information is going to be things that a lot of you already know, especially if you've had the grant before, or if you're cohort 17. Some of you from cohort 26, this may be your first summer program, and so I'm going to touch on a lot of different things in today's training. A lot of it is just kind of reminders. And then some of it is some things that probably all of us need to hear again. So again, if you have any questions as we go, oh, good, there's Melissa. Let me see really quickly if I can make her. Let's see. Hold on just one second, everyone. Let me see if I can make her, or she can help me let people in. Awesome. Okay.
Hey, Amanda,
Okay.
this is Kelly. You can add me
Hey,
in
are
too.
you in there too? Okay, I didn't see you
am.
earlier. Sorry.
That's
Yay.
okay. Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Okay. Well, it's showing not in meeting. Hold on, let me see. Sorry, everyone. That's weird. Oh, wait. I think I just saw you. Hold on. There you are. Okay. I missed it. All right. Co-host. All right. Sorry, everyone. Okay. Now they can help me let people in. That'd be great. All right. So let me just remind you guys of who our staff is. We have myself, I'm Amanda Rylant, state coordinator. Nia Marshall is our ASA. Sometimes you may get emails from her. A lot of times you get them just directly from me, but you may get some things from her as well. Of course, we've got Dr. Melissa McKinney and Dr. Kelly Smith and Carla White, who are our education specialists that work with 21st Century. And then Adrian Dennis, Joseph Dyer, and Kim Hendon are our technical assistants. Hopefully you were all very well familiar with all of them. Let's see. Okay, so let's just really quickly remind ourselves what kind of activities you guys are allowed to do, are authorized to do with 21st Century. I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to give you a chance just to kind of glance through them really quickly. They're the same activities that we've always had in every RFA for, well, at least as long as I've been with the program, which hasn't been that long, but I know it's the same. They're pretty much the same as they were from cohort 17. The only thing I'm just realizing, and so I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I put this together very quickly today. This meeting just kind of snuck up on me. And so I pulled a lot of resources from other PowerPoints. And so one thing I'm realizing on here that's not listed, that wasn't it back in cohort 17, I don't think, but is currently an allowable item, is items that have something to do with weapons, which is kind of crazy to think about, but you are allowed to do activities that where weapons are part of that activity. And what I mean by weapon is you could do a shooting class, like a hunter safety type thing. You could do archery. And it used to be that those items were not allowed, but the feds did make those allowable sometime in the last year and a half, something like that. So I don't think those are listed here, but this is pretty much the same activities that have been allowed in the past. Keep in mind our 6 focus areas is the academic achievement and student engagement. So we want to make sure that you are including ELA, reading, mathematic activities in your summer programs. That should be part of everyone's summer program. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be for huge hours or huge amounts of time each day, but they do need to be included each week. Our focus is also on attendance, which is regular school day attendance. So your summer program may not affect that tremendously, but is still one of our focuses. Behavior during the regular school day, holistic health and wellness, service learning, and parent and family involvement. Those are our 6 big focus areas for our state. And they're pretty much based off of what the feds require as well. All right, so requirements for summer programming. We ask again that you offer activities and services that are consistent with your academic and enrichment goals. If you are not aware what your program goals and objectives are, please refer back to your original application, or you may have to look, if you're 17, you may have to look at your original application and then any potential changes you've made to your application details over the last few years. But you do need to make sure that your summer programming is meeting those goals and objectives that you put forth when you submitted your application either last year or a few years ago. Make sure that you're operating your program the number of hours that you stated in your application that you were going to operate your program. So make sure that make sure that if the minimum for the summer is 75 hours, but if you said, especially for cohort 26, because your funding was actually partially based off of the hours you said you were going to serve your students, you need to make sure that if you said you were going to run a program for 120 hours during the summer, that you do run it for 120 hours. Your program should be designed for evidence-based learning, engagement, small group implementation. We would like you to try to maintain that 12-to-1 student to teacher ratio. Try your best to have certified instructors in your core subject areas, or teaching your core subject areas. And then if you need to move your summer program to another location than what it says in your application details and EGAP, you need to make sure that you request permission with the ALSDE to do that. More than likely, we will be perfectly fine with that, but you need to send us an email making sure that that's okay. And then if we say it is, then we'll ask you to do a revision in EGAP to update your application details to say where your summer program is going to be occurring. All right. Oh, yes, I did mean to say that. So there's a question in the chat saying, as long as it's 75 hours, can we start our learning prior to June 1st? Absolutely. That's why I have a star there. Your program, as long as you're out for the summer, so I know some schools end a week or maybe even 2 weeks before the end of May. And so as long as your school is officially out for the summer, you can start your 21st century program anytime. So that June to July 31st is just kind of really more of an estimate. You can start it before then, anytime, as long as your system is officially out of school. So if you're not officially out, I know some school systems that last week or so, technically they're in, but they've sent the kids kind of home. They don't really have them come into school. That doesn't count. So your school system has to be officially ended. Your school year has to be officially ended, and then anytime after that, you can start your programs if you need to. Kelly and Melissa, I don't know if y'all are getting the waiting in the lobby things, but if you'll help me with that, that'd be great. Okay. All right, I think I covered all of this. Same thing with your program hours, by the way. If you need to change those, then let us know. Again, mainly I'm talking to cohort 26 because your funding depends on it. Just understand that if you go down in hours, then we need to reduce your funding. So in order to keep the funding that you were awarded in your grant, you need to at least do the number of hours that you said you were going to do in your program application. All right. All summer field trip requests paperwork is due by May 15th. I did not link it here in this presentation because it is all in one very convenient place on our new website, which is linked here. But if you go to our website and then go to subgrantee resources, I believe is what the tab says. All your field trip resources subgrantee resources. So all your field trip resources, I think you have to scroll down just a little bit. They're all right there together along with the submission link. For now, you will still submit it using that link. We have some changes for that coming soon, but we won't go into that today as far as where you're going to start submitting things. But we do have a plan to make it where you guys can start submitting everything into one place, and so that's going to be really great. But we'll talk about that sometime in the future once we're closer to having that developed. But yes, everything you need is there, including the guidelines, the approved field trip list. We're going to talk more about field trips in a little bit, but just while it's on my mind, if there is a venue on your approved field trip, if there is a venue that you want to go to that is an educational venue, but it's not on the approved field trip list, please reach out to us and let us know about it, and we'll be happy to add it if it is appropriate venue to add. We aren't out in the classroom anymore. We may not know about some new venues that may have opened up, and so we try to update it when people let us know about places. But let us know if we need to add any locations to the approved field trip list. Also, you'll find your field trip planning information, field trip lesson plan, and then your submission log. Those are all things that have to be, or a few of those things are things that have to be submitted. And again, you have to submit all of your summer field trip requests by May 15th. Before May 15th is what we would prefer, but it has to be done by May 15th. You're allowed to do one field trip each week of your program during the summer. Leaving campus for just regularly scheduled program activities like taking the kids to the Y for swimming lessons or visiting your library for reading time, that we don't necessarily count that as a field trip, okay? I know that you're leaving the building, and I know that that was a requirement in the past, but we realized that that wasn't very fair to count that as your weekly field trip and not allow you to go further away from your site on a Friday or something like that. So if it is part of your regularly scheduled program, something that you do on a weekly basis, or you do it on a consistent basis throughout your summer program, and it's in the neighborhood, like it's close by, especially if it's like in walking distance, but definitely if it's just a quick bus ride over like to the local Y or local library or someplace like that, then you do not have to count that as your field trip. You do still need to follow your procedures for making sure that those kids have permission to leave the building. You've gotten the correct permission from the parents. They've signed a field trip. They still may need to sign a field trip release form, so that they know that you're taking them outside the building. So you need to follow your LEA or your site's permission and procedures for that, but we won't count that as your one field trip. Okay, I had a question pop up. Let me read it really quick. We still have program, even though the regular date may have. Okay, so the question is, I have a question about attendance after our regular day school has had awards day. We make our parents aware that we still have the program, even though the regular day may have awards day 3 or 4 days prior to the last official day of school. Yeah, that's what I was mentioning a minute ago. Many times we don't have any kids at the school, but do we have to count that in our attendance? It kills our average and it really isn't our fault. That's a great question. Hmm. Let me think on that one because I don't, let's see, do you have to count attendance? Because you're not asking, do you have to have your program? You're asking, do you have to count attendance that day? Oh, let me think on that one and get back to you because I'm really not, I don't want to answer it and I'm not really sure how much that affects your averages and what all that would affect. So me, I will make a note of that and let me get back to you on that one. Give me just 1 second. I write that down. Or actually, Melissa or Kelly, can y'all please write that down and remind me that we need to get back to Kathy about that? Or to the whole group. When we send the recording out, we'll make sure we have that answered when we send it out. Okay. Make sure I've got this. Oh, okay. So the next item is t-shirts. You may now purchase a field trip t-shirt for your students for all field trips throughout the school year. Okay, you may have already done that. You may have a lot of programs don't do field trips during the year, so you may not have. But you're allowed to purchase a field trip t-shirt for each student. We used to make you guys like take those shirts back and keep them at the program and wash them somehow. We don't require that any longer. We got verification from the feds or from Brewman. I can't remember which one that said no, that's fine for them to keep those t-shirts. That is an allowable expense. However, we don't want you purchasing like a shirt for every field trip. It just needs to be one shirt that the kids take home. They wash it and reuse it each time you go on a field trip. We would advise you to maybe purchase some extra t-shirts. Oh, let me go back a little bit. You can also purchase a t-shirt for your staff members to wear when you go on field trips. Remember, you're not allowed to purchase like staff shirts for just regular programming, but you are allowed to do a field trip t-shirt. So like, and we suggest like a bright color or something so that the kids can easily find their group if they get away from the group somehow. Um, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I let everybody in. We also recommend that maybe you buy some extra t-shirts in multiple sizes that you can loan out to students in case they lose their t-shirt. I wouldn't give them another one, but I would say that you can borrow one and then yes, get it back at the end so that you can do that. And then also for like parent chaperones who might want to go and be a chaperone on a field trip. I don't think technically you're supposed to really necessarily buy those parents a t-shirt to keep because they may only go on one trip. But you can definitely have some extras that you can loan out to parents to wear during the field trip. Keep in mind that field trips are only for the students registered for the 21st Century Program and their families as chaperones. I know that comes up a lot of summers, especially when you braid your funds and kind of try to incorporate the 21st Century Summer Program with your math and literacy camps. There's always questions about, well, can the math and literacy kids go on the 21st Century field trip on Friday? And unfortunately, that's going to be a no. That is not an allowable expense. They have to, only students that can go on those field trips would be the 21st Century Program kids. Okay. When you take a field trip, it has to be related to the lesson or the unit that you're doing. Okay. The field trips should be related to your summer programming activities, not you plan activities based on the field trip that you want to take with your kids. Okay. So you should come up with what your summer learning is going to be, whether you do your lessons day by day or whether you have a unit lesson plan, which we'll talk more about lesson plans in a little bit. But if you have a unit and let's say it's on different kinds of biomes, something like that, and you say that you're going to take the kids to the Tennessee Aquarium so that they can see the sea life and things like that, that would be completely, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because you're doing biomes. Maybe one week you're talking about the ocean biome, and that's your field trip is going to be to take the kids to an aquarium. That makes perfect sense. What you shouldn't do is say, hey, we really want to take the kids to the Tennessee Aquarium. Let's figure out a way to make it happen. Let's figure out how we can teach lessons to make it where it makes sense to go to the Tennessee Aquarium. So, make sure that you're determining what your field trips are going to be based off of what your lessons are going to be throughout your summer program and what your units are going to be, what kind of learning you're going to be doing with the students. Okay. You have to take field trips to venues whose primary purpose is for educational purposes, right? Such as museums, science centers, historical parks, aquariums, like I said before, a zoo, something like that, okay? No longer, per the feds, no longer can you take a field trip to venues whose primary purpose is entertainment, even if you have like an amazing lesson plan to go with it, okay? This was something that the feds really came on strongly to us about, especially during that time when they were talking about discontinuing 21st century programming. Wasting money was one of the reasons behind it, and so we've got to make sure that we are being good stewards of these funds. And I have seen where other states have been written up or gotten in trouble for allowing field trips to an entertainment type park, even though that they had a lesson plan to go with it. Okay, so please make sure. Talladega Speedway is an absolute no. I understand you could teach them about physics or centrifugal force or whatever, but no. If the venue is someplace where most of the time people go there to have fun, and not in an educational way, but in an entertainment way, then that is not going to be an allowable activity. Okay. I'm sorry. I know that there are some really great lesson plans that you can do with some of these other places, but the feds have just pretty much said that's a no, and other states have been written up for it, so we're not going to do that here. Okay. If you have any questions, just like one was just asked in the chat, if you're unsure about the venue you want to go to, you want to ask before you go through all the trouble of creating the lesson plan and all that, then please feel free to reach out to us and ask. Also, that's not in these slides, but we highly recommend if you know that you want to go somewhere, you want to take a field trip, and it does match with your activities that you're doing during your summer program, but you're struggling to fill out that lesson plan format. You're trying to figure out exactly what you should do. Use AI to help you out. Okay. We've practiced that here, trying to use some AI tools to kind of help develop a field trip. And it's fantastic. It'll help you come up with great activities to do before, during, and after the field trip when you get back. So if you're struggling to do those field trip forms, use AI to help you come up with ideas of things that you can do. Okay, if the total length of your field trip is longer than 4 hours, I don't know that we've ever said this in the past, but if your field trip, if once you've left your building and you've gone to where you're going and coming back, if it takes longer than 4 hours to do that, then you're supposed to provide a meal to those students. Okay, that's according to DHR. So if that's the case, then we first ask you to try to find a community partner that might help you sponsor meals. Okay, that's what we used to have. Everybody used to have to do. You can't charge students for anything to do with the field trip, including the meals. So, it used to be before we allowed food purchases, community partners is who all the programs would reach out to help them fund meals. So they will do that. So we still encourage you to try to reach out to your community partners to see if they will help fund meals. Okay. If that's a no-go, if you can't find a community partner to help you, then make sure you reach out to your CMP program to see if they can provide packed lunches that you can take safely with you on the field trip. So I mean like shelf stable food that doesn't necessarily have to be refrigerated. It's not going to make the kids sick. You know, if it's on maybe not a hot bus, but maybe not a cold bus either, right? Um, so reach out to them. There's been several situations in the past where CMP programs don't run at all, or they don't run on Fridays. And that's when most people take their field trips. And so there have been issues. There have been some CMP programs who will go ahead and make up packed lunches the day before, but some are not willing to do that. And so if they're not, they're not. Okay. We can't force them to do it. Summer feeding is a totally optional thing for each LEA CMP program. And so we can't make them do that. But that's what we need you to do. That's your second option if you can't get people to sponsor, if you can't get a business or someone to sponsor the meals for a field trip. And then if neither of those is something you can do, then you are welcome to request permission from the ALSDE to use 21st Century funds to purchase meals for the field trip. Okay. In order to do that, we expect you to submit to us a proposal that gives your justification for needing to purchase food, plans for where the food will be purchased, along with the approximate cost per student and total cost of the whole thing. Okay. Basically, that proposal needs to answer any questions that we or the feds might have as to how that cost per student was reasonable and why it was necessary for you to purchase that food for those students using 21st Century funds. Okay. So when I say where the food will be purchased, we don't give you like a minimum amount that you can spend because we understand that sometimes you have to take a certain route and there may not be safe places for you to stop to feed those kids, right? We expect you to pick a place that's safe, but we also want you to pick a place that that is a reasonable price, right? So if you go to an exit and there's 5 different restaurants at that exit, and there's a McDonald's and there's a Chick-fil-A and there's a Cracker Barrel or a Golden Corral, we expect you to go to the McDonald's or the Chick-fil-A because those are the cheaper of the two options, right? So, but we understand that that may not be that may not be the you know the situation. It may be that the only option is something like a Golden Corral, and if that's the case, then you just need to make sure that you justify that really, really well. Okay. Just be mindful to try not to spend too much. Get the kids a nice, healthy meal, but don't go above and beyond. Definitely no steak dinners, nothing like that. It really needs to be something that as healthy as you can get it to be, but also a reasonable in price. Also take into consideration, like if you're going to someplace like the McWayne Center, I know at McWayne Center, if you purchase the kids' ticket and a meal at the same time, it's actually pretty cost effective. And so if that's what you need to do, then if that's the most cost effective way for you to feed the kids, then by all means, that's what you need to put in your proposal. Even though that meal may not be the super cheapest thing, that you could get in the area, in that Birmingham area, there may be like a cheaper Subway or something like that down the street. But if you can justify the reason to go ahead and purchase it with a ticket, like the cost of the two together, is reasonable, or it's a safer thing to do because you're not having to actually have the kids walk on the sidewalk down the road downtown Birmingham, then just make sure you justify that. Okay. Okay. All right. A couple of questions have popped up. What about a local manufacturing plant for middle or high schoolers? I would say that would, I'm assuming you're asking about a field trip. I would say that would be fine. Or so I'm not sure if you're asking if that's an okay place to take students or if that would count as a field trip. So which one would that be, Christy McCauley? Field trip. Okay. So I would say that if it's something that you're doing a one-time thing of, then you would count as a field trip, even though it's local. That's not part of your regular programming. It's not part of your weekly, we do this every week, we're going to go do this. that would be a field trip. But if it is, let's say that you're doing middle and high school, maybe you're doing like an internship program or something like that, or they're going to this manufacturing plant like once a week to learn different aspects of manufacturing each time they visit, then and that's part of your regular scheduled activities for some of the kids, then I would say that no, it wouldn't be considered a field trip. So it really just depends on the situation. Okay. And then let's see. Another question, does anyone have a large vector file of the Alabama 21st Century logo we could use for t-shirts? That's a great question. We will have to check into that because I don't know that we do. I don't know that I have access to one. I'm sure there's one somewhere. I bet someone like Lindsay or Jennifer Baker or someone like that who's been doing this for a while might have something. So we will try to track that down. Okay, Lindsay has one. So Lindsay, if you could send that out, that would be great. Okay. All right. I think I've answered all the questions in the chat. Okay, let's see. All right, got that done. All right, we're moving away from field trips and now talking about expectations of different positions during the summer programming, okay? It's the same as the regular school year, pretty much, okay? Expectations of the program director. So just keep in mind, I'm not going to read all of these, but keep in mind that the program director is really supposed to be more of a part-time position, okay? You need to, if you go to this third bullet, general rule of thumb is that a program director should be paid 8 hours per week per site for up to 40 hours a week, okay? So the only time a program director, including during the summer, should be full-time is if they run 5 or more programs, if they're over 5 or more programs, okay? There really shouldn't be a reason for a program director to be at one site all day long. That is the job of the site coordinator, okay? Think of the program director as more of a superintendent of a school system, while the site coordinator is more like the principal of a school, okay? Principal's there all day, every day. I mean, I know that's not exactly true always, but they're there, all the time. When that superintendent may just visit each school every now and then. So the expectation is that the program director visits the schools at least once a week and, does make sure things are running properly. They ensure that fiscal matters are being taken care of, attendance is being recorded, those PARs, those personal activity reports are being done, safety drills are being done, and things like that. So they're over making sure that the general program is working as a whole, but they don't need to necessarily be at the 21st century program all day, every day. Okay. All right, site coordinator. Site coordinator does need to be there because they're like I said, like the principal of the school. They're there to take care of things like discipline issues. There should be a site coordinator at each summer program site. Cannot share a site coordinator between more than one site because that person is in charge. That person needs to be there during the day, being at that one site the whole time. They are responsible for daily operation coordination, delivery of services at their program centers. Okay. Now the program director and site coordinator can be the same person if you only have one site under your subgrantee. But otherwise you should have both positions. That the site coordinator should be responsible for ensuring that daily attendance is entered into easy reports, that the 21st century students have been marked as 21st century in Power School, and reviewing the GEPRA data for the program before submitting it, okay? Now, I'm not saying they have to be the one who enters the information into easy reports, but they should ensure that it's being done, okay? So again, that site coordinator is like the principal of the program and should be on site for the full program day. If that's not possible, then you should have a lead teacher in place that can assume the site coordinator's administrative responsibilities if they're not there. If they have to leave or if they're absent one day, then you should have a lead teacher in place that can take the place and take over those administrative duties for that site coordinator if they cannot be there. All right, I need to go a little faster. We're going to be here all day. All right, you can have a fiscal manager in place. This is the same as during the school year. Okay. Again, there's no reason for them to be there all day. They really should only be working, a couple hours per week or whatever. It shouldn't be an extensive amount of time for the fiscal manager. Data entry person. Now you may have a data entry person who's responsible for entering in that daily attendance. If so, then they may be there. They may be there throughout the day. Whether they need to be there the entire day or not is questionable. But I'm not going to say it's not allowed if there's a reason for them to be there. I mean, I understand that it may be hard to have someone come in just like to take that attendance in the morning and then again in the afternoon. It may be that, you take attendance one way in the morning, like by hand in the morning, and then the data entry person comes in the last couple of hours of the day and puts it in, however you want to work that out. Also, just keep in mind your 30% administrative cap. You don't want to go over that. So you want to be as frugal as possible with your administrative positions. All right, lead teacher again. You should have a lead teacher in place even during the summer. Again, that person is going to take over for the site coordinator if they can't be there during the day or if they have to leave early or whatever. But also that lead teacher should help provide instruction to students. They also should be a certified teacher that might help other teachers in the program develop their lesson plans or come up with activities to do and things like that. Okay. That lead teacher, you probably should be paying them a little bit more per hour if they're doing these extra duties. But they should analyze all program data and use the RFA application, your application that you submitted when you got the grant, to help them plan those lesson plans and ensure that all the activities align with I know it says school day academics. I know we're not having school day during the time, but what kids need to be learning during the summer to help prepare them for the next school year. That they're meeting those SMART goals and objectives. Okay. All right, then you've got your regular teacher. Okay. Teachers are, again, should be responsible for the primary delivery of any kind of instruction, especially any kind of instruction like your English language arts, your mathematics, your sciences, things like that. They should be using evidence-based, research-based programming, or what's the word I'm trying to think of? Curriculum. That's the word I was trying to think of. Sorry. They should be using quality curriculum that's research-based and evidence-based to help plan those lessons. Okay, even for like enrichment lessons, you do need to still have some sort of lesson plan, or at least if you don't want to do a daily lesson plan, you can do a unit plan. But there needs to be a plan in place of what's going to be taught from day to day to day, and there should be a flow to it that makes sense and that prepares students for the next school year, making sure that they don't get behind during the summer. Okay. Teachers should be certified if possible. Okay, I understand that that's easier said than done for some school systems. Some school systems have a really hard time finding certified teachers. Same with some of the CBOs. They may have a hard time finding certified teachers. Okay, but if they're going to teach any kind of academic content, they do need to be certified, or they need to have one of these criteria. They need to be either a retired or former educator. They need to be a third or fourth year college student that's majoring in English, reading, math, or another appropriate subject. Or they could just be a regular individual that has a bachelor's degree in English, reading, math, or another appropriate subject. Okay. You don't want just any old person teaching these students, because they can actually cause more damage than help them in some cases if they don't understand the reasoning behind what they're teaching, especially in things like science and mathematics. So especially it's okay. It may be okay to not have a certified person reading with students and things like that. But if you're going to do scientific activities and things like that, you really, the person who is leading the activity really needs to understand the true science behind that activity so that they don't create misconceptions in the students when they're doing the activities with them. And that happens all the time. Okay. So that's really important that you have the appropriate people in place. All right, you can have teacher assistants. They assist with the delivery of instruction. They help out the primary teacher. This could be a retired teacher, a parapro, auxiliary teachers, basically anyone who falls within those guidelines of someone who's not certified could be a teacher assistant. You can have student assistants that you are allowed to pay. This could be a high school or a college student whose job is to work directly with the students. Do keep in mind, though, if you hire student assistants, they may not be alone with the students, okay? So don't have a student assistant take a child to the bathroom or have them lead a class, or work with a class alone for any period of time. There needs to be an adult in the room with those students, okay? So please keep that in mind. And then volunteers, okay? Volunteer is anybody who wants to provide a service for the 21st Century Program and is not compensated for that service. The feds encourage you to have volunteers in your program. As a matter of fact, I saw that as something that we're actually supposed to be checking for in compliance monitoring today in another webinar that I participated in earlier before this webinar. So you do need to have volunteers, but just keep in mind that the volunteers should be 21 years of age or older and must have that current fingerprinting and background check on file, okay? For your volunteers only, if they are a good quality volunteer that you want to help with your program, you can use 21st Century funds to pay for their background check. But for vendors and things like that, we're going to talk more about background checks in a second. They need to pay for that themselves. If they're being paid, they need to pay for the background check themselves. Okay. But if they're volunteering for your program, then you're welcome to pay for that background check. Student assistants, do they have to have a background check? That depends. The high schools students do not. The college students are supposed to. We have made some exceptions for college students, but it's mainly, as far as I know, it's only with one program, and that's Al's Pals. We're going to discuss that in one of the slides coming up. They do a background check, but it's not the fingerprinted background check. But it's supposed to be if it's a student, like a college student, if they have graduated from high school, then they're supposed to have that background check done. Okay, that fingerprinted background check done. All right. So here's that. Here's the law behind the reasoning of the fingerprint background check. Okay, so any certified or non-certified individual of public educational facilities and any individual of non-public educational facilities that work with children, youth, adolescents, or the elderly in either a paid or voluntary capacity must undergo a criminal background check and be fingerprinted. This is an Alabama law. Here's the laws quoted here as to where that came from, okay? So all personnel that works with the program has to have that fingerprinted background check. Any volunteers and high school graduates, okay, so if they're still in high school, they don't have to have it. But if they've graduated, who work directly with students, they have to have that background check, the fingerprinted one. And vendors who work with students have to have that fingerprinted background check. Okay, and I'm saying fingerprinted because we had an issue come up last year where a lot of people were doing background checks, but it wasn't the fingerprinted version, which checks the FBI database and all of that. And they had to go and get the correct background checks done for their staffing. It caused a big hoopla, a big deal. So make sure that they are getting the correct one. Okay, I'm gonna go through how to do that really quickly. All right, so if they are personnel with the Alabama school system, then you should be able to check to make sure that they have had their background checks by going to the teacher certification portal or T-Cert, okay? If you can't find them in the portal, then they have to go through the ALSDE teacher certification process to get clearance before working with students, okay? I will send out this presentation. There's links here to the different sites, okay, so that you can click on and go to those links. All right. So let me expand on this. Anybody who, well, I may be covering that in the next slide. Let me make sure. If they're personnel, then that's what they have to do. Okay. All right. So this is not exactly correct. I should have read this better before I put it. Okay, so I will fix this before I send this presentation out. Anybody who is being paid with 21st century funds has to go through T-Cert to get their teacher certification, okay? So let me just fix this right now. Anyone paid with 21st century funds. Ah, okay. If they're not paid, your volunteers, so that's going to be this next one. They can go through these steps. All right. So we went through all of this last year. Some of you were here with us and some of you weren't, but we went through this issue with trying to figure out exactly how this had to be done. And at first we were told that everyone had to go through T-Cert, and then T-Cert came back and said, we'll do it for people who are being paid, but we can't do it for all volunteers as well. So, volunteers, if they need a background check, it's up to you as the subgrantee or the program director to determine how you're going to ask them to get their checks done. Okay. One way you can do that is reach out to DHR. They may be willing to do those background checks for you. So you can reach out to your local DHR. They may do those for you. If they're not willing to do that, we can't say that they're going to do that for you, right? We're not in charge of DHR. That's up to them. But we would suggest you reach out to DHR and see if they're willing to do the background checks. And if they're not, then they will need to go through their local sheriff office or police department to have it done. Okay. So again, there's links here in the presentation that explains how to go through DHR. And what the criteria has to be, okay? The bad thing about this, I think if you go through DHR, they do give you, at the end, they give you like a certification whether this person is or is not safe to be around students. But if you go through your local sheriff's office or police department, they just give you the results of the background check, but they don't say, yes, this person is safe to be around students, or no, this person is not safe to be around students. Okay. So you as the program director or your program director has to make that determination. And there's links here to the DHR website that talks about the types of things that can be in a person's background check that should make you automatically say, no, they can't be around kids. So obviously any kind of abuse situations that they've been involved in, whether that's physical or sexual abuse, that would be an automatic no. That's two I can think of off the top of my head. Things like a traffic ticket is probably fine. Things like a DUI, that may be frowned upon. Okay, so there's a list. There's links here to lists from DHR that says what items on a person's background check you should say no, these people are not qualified to be around kids. Okay, so that's why we prefer if they, that's why we are thrilled that T-Cert allows pretty much anyone who's paid with 21st century funds. So that would be any staff members or any vendors that need to be go through the background check. They can do it through T-Cert, and T-Cert will say at the end of it, they'll say, yes, this person is safe to be around students, or no, this person is not safe to be around students. But if you go through, and I think DHR does the same thing, but if you go through just your local police department, you have to kind of make that determination yourself. Okay. If you need us to help you with that, just let us know if you have to follow those steps. All right. there's that exception that I was mentioning earlier, ALS PALS. It's run through the University of Alabama. And this is one where hundreds of university students volunteer to provide tutoring and homework help for 21st century students in that area. Um, the college pays, or the students pay, the college student, I'm sorry, pays $35 for a background check. It is not the fingerprinted background check, but it is a pretty good background check. But those students do have to go through some lessons before they go out with the students. They have to sign something saying that they'll never be alone with students. Like there's things that they have to go through. Now, that may be changed now. They may actually make the students do the fingerprinted background check now. This was the last time I had spoken with them, and it's been several months. And I know that when I spoke with them, they said that they would probably go ahead and change that because a lot of these students are going into teaching and they're going to have that background check done anyway. And so they might as well go ahead and do it now. But I don't know. I didn't think to call or find out whether they've done that or not. So but they are one that we have. They sent us a big letter and we got approval for them to go ahead and just use the regular background check for that program. If you have any other similar programs that you want to work with your students and have that they want to request an exception to the background check, then just contact us at the State Department and we will look at the situation and determine whether we can approve that or not. Okay. All right. When you have those background checks done, you make sure that you're keeping documentation of it. So if we come out to your site, your TAs are supposed to check for this, but you need to be able to provide us a list with all of the individuals that work with your students, including your high school graduates, your college students, volunteers, vendors. Provide documentation of each individual who has had that cleared background check. Each site should have a copy for their personnel, and their program director should have a copy of all personnel. So if you're a program director over multiple sites, you should have access. You should have like a file that has all the sites' background checks in it that we could get from you. But also the site coordinator should have one for the people that are at their site. Any individuals that are not cleared, and that includes vendors, are not allowed to provide any services to students until they've been cleared, okay? If you allow adults to work with your students and they do not have a cleared background check, you are taking it upon yourself to do a very risky thing, okay? And that includes volunteers. That includes the whole gamut of people that might want to work with your students, okay? I don't care if it's like a sweet little lady from the church down the road. You don't know that what that person does, in their personal time. Do not let any adults work with your students unless they've had that background check. If you do, then it is on you if something goes wrong. If some child if something is horrible is done to a child on your dime, okay? It's just all, on your time. So that's just all I'm going to say about that. Make sure you're getting those done. All right, moving on. Just remember, just because it's allowable doesn't mean it's prudent or approvable. And the goals, objectives, and activities that you do for your summer program should drive your purchasing decisions. Okay, we're not going to focus a lot on purchasing and costs. Just going to cover a few little things really quickly. Okay, just make sure that all of your spending is necessary, reasonable, follows any rules or limits that we've set, follows your caps and things like that. You've managed them efficiently, and that you're recording all your purchases using those standard accounting principles. Okay. Yeah, sorry. All right. Make sure that you're only using 21st century funds for authorized activities, not unauthorized. You cannot pay another entity to run your project. Okay, so please make sure that if you are the subgrantee, that you're not paying like your co-applicant to run your program. Okay, I don't think anybody's doing that, but we did have some some applications that were submitted for cohort 27 where that was the case and they were disqualified. So hopefully we don't have anyone else doing that and then we just never noticed it before. Please keep in mind that any leftover money at the end of the grant period will be allocated as carryover. But just remember, if your carryover is excessive, we have the right to cut that. And there's a very good chance that we're cutting out all carryover in future grant years anyway. That's already been written into the cohort 27 application, and I'm like 95% sure we're going to do that for in the future for cohort 26. So we'll be sending out a notice about that soon as well. We just can't keep allowing carryover to snowball year after year after year. So please spend your funds in a timely manner. All right, let's talk about food purchases. We've already talked about food for field trips, how that's okay. Let's talk about for just your general regular summer program. Keep in mind that you're required to use 21st century funds to supplement, not supplant other federal, state, or local funds. And so if your CMP program, if you're an LEA and your LEA CMP program runs a summer feeding program, then they should be providing food and meals for your students for your 21st century program, okay? Because otherwise it would be supplanting. So you should, but keep in mind, and if you're a CBO, you should also be able to reach out to the school systems of the students who attend that school system, and if they're running a summer feeding program, they should be able to provide meals and snacks for your students, okay? However, during the summer feeding programs, if they are running, they can only provide 2 meals or snacks per day, okay? Not just for 21st century, but for any student, all right? So a lot of situations will occur where they'll provide breakfast and lunch for the summer program, but they can't provide a snack in the afternoon. In the past, before we started allowing food purchases, again, people would reach out to their, community partners and ask people to donate snacks and things like that. And we encourage you to still do that. There's nothing wrong with asking your community partners to donate snacks. But if that is not an option, or you've tried and they provided some but not enough, not for every day, then you can use 21st century funds to purchase afternoon snacks. But we ask that you try to purchase those snacks from your CMP program, because that way we know that the snacks that you're purchasing follow those federal regulations and guidelines for food for students, okay? So you should be able to do that. If your CMP program is running a summer feeding program, they probably would like you to purchase snacks from them, because they hardly get reimbursed anything from the feds for snacks, but they could charge you a reasonable amount, like $1 per snack or something like that, and actually maybe even make a little bit of money. And we're okay with that as long as the amount is reasonable, okay? Now it needs to be reasonable. It doesn't need to be $5 for a snack. It needs to be like $1 or $2. And they need to provide us with a breakdown of the cost of that snack. So we're about to get to that in just a second. I'm getting ahead of myself again. All right. So the snack has to be if a summer feeding program is being offered, I keep saying that because there are some that don't, okay, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But if summer feeding is offering food in your LEA or for the schools that you serve, then the snack, if you want to use 21st century funds to purchase the snack, it has to be in addition to the 2 meals or snacks that's provided by summer feeding, okay? So we still want summer feeding. Let's say you're only going to, so for example, let's say you're only going to run your program from like 1 to 4. Well, you shouldn't have to, if you've got a summer feeding program in your LEA, you shouldn't have to buy any food, because the 2 allowable snacks or food, really they should just provide a snack for you, and that should be paid for with federal CMP funds, okay? If you're running your program from like 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, then they should provide lunch and a snack. But if you're running your program from 7 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, then they may only be able to provide breakfast and lunch, and then you need to purchase a snack. Okay. So if you were going to purchase that from your CMP program, we ask that you do a MOU. If you're an LEA and you're purchasing food from your LEA CMP program, then you need to do an MOU because you're spending money within your school system. If you're a CBO and you're purchasing snacks from an LEA CMP, that's needs to be a contract because the CBO is a different organization than the CMP program, and so you would need to do a contract because there's going to be an exchange of funds. Okay, I know that gets really confusing for people when to use an MOU and when to use a contract, but that's the case. And as part of that contract or MOU, the CMP program should provide you with a meal cost calculation. They know how to do these, and I know that because my husband works for CMP here at the state. Okay, he knows all the CMP stuff, and they know how to do these meal cost calculations. So in other words, part of that calculation is going to be the cost of the food itself, but it also may add a little bit of extra to help pay for the staffing that is required to put the snacks together, to pay for the snacks that the sack that they come in or whatever. So they need to provide a meal cost calculation to explain where the cost of the snack came from, which needs to be reasonable. Okay. And then in that contract, again, it needs to include the number or contract or MOU, depending on the situation. It needs to include the number of snacks that are going to be provided per day, the number of days that they're going to provide that snack, the price per snack with that meal cost calculation, and the total contracted amount. Okay. All right. So that's what needs to be provided. And then you would send that to the State Department, that MOU or contract to the State Department, and we would read through it and say, yes, this is great, sign off on it and approve it, and you are free to go. Okay. Make sure you have state approval before you do this. I've been really surprised that I have not seen a whole lot of MOUs with CMP or contracts with CMP where funds are being exchanged. So, it is something that you can do. And if you haven't done it already, you're welcome to submit those now. Okay. All right. What if your CMP program is not running a summer feeding program? Okay. And that happens a lot. Summer feeding is not a requirement. A lot of school systems don't make enough money to run a summer feeding program. They don't make enough money. They don't have enough kids to serve to justify running a summer feeding program. And the federal government really doesn't give them very much money for reimbursing for the food that they give the students. And so a lot of CMP programs are kind of in the hole. They're in the red by the end of the school year. And so they may not be able to do a summer feeding program. So it's not that they're being mean if they say that we're not doing it. It's just they may not be able to, or they may not be able to find the staffing to do it during the summer. If that is the case, again, you have to have advance permission, but you can use 21st Century funds if your budget permits to provide breakfast, lunch, and a snack for your program if they're there for that long enough to justify providing all three. Okay. So how does that work? All right. First of all, you would have to get it approved. So part of that approval process is to provide a letter from your superintendent or your CMP director stating that your LEA CMP will not run any summer feeding programs during the summer. Okay. You must also provide a meal plan proposal that includes the cost of each meal. Again, kind of a meal cost calculation, the contractor who is going to provide the meals, a plan for how the food will be delivered and or stored if needed, where the meals are going to be served, etc. Okay, so that meal plan proposal must be approved by the ALSE before those services begin. All right. We highly recommend that you try to reach out to your surrounding LEAs to see if they would be willing to see if they're running a summer feeding program and see if they would be willing to provide that food, those food and snacks. Okay. There are some CMP programs that make a good bit, they make money during the summer by providing food to other school systems who aren't running a summer feeding program. They do it for churches who may be having like a summer program. There's all kinds of programs that need food through the summer, and so they should be willing to do that. They may be very happy to do that for you. Again, we prefer for you to do that because that way we know that the food that you're providing the students is meeting those federal requirements. Okay. But if that's not an option, then you can try to reach out and contract with a local restaurant. Um, you know, hopefully maybe there's like a meat and three type restaurant, or maybe even a church that has a summer feeding program that you could reach out to that might be able to provide those meals. But we highly recommend that you try to reach out to those if you can, or just whatever local restaurant you can do that that's going to use safe food practices and things like that. Okay. I do want to mention just really quickly that you do need to be careful and understand that if a school is not running a summer feeding program, from what I understand, they're not necessarily allowed to use the lunchroom equipment to make their own meals. Okay, so because that equipment was purchased with USDA CMP funds, it's not supposed to be used by a cook, a chef, a program outside of that CMP program to provide meals for students. So just be aware of that. That you might be able to use like the lunchroom tables and things like that, but the kitchen equipment may not be allowable for you to use. So you need to make sure that you've checked into that before you just assume that you'll be able to use the equipment that's in a school's kitchen. Okay. All right. I think that's everything with food. Moving on. And I'm checking the chat. I don't see any questions. So I'm just going to keep on going until I see a question because I know you guys are ready to go home probably. All right. Just a quick reminder about when to use MOUs and when to use contracts. Just keep in mind that an MOU is supposed to be used when there's an agreement. If there's an agreement between like a 21st century program and an LEA where you couldn't bid out work outside of the LEA. Yeah, I didn't create this slide, sorry. Basically, these are correct, but basically the rule of thumb is if you have an agreement with an entity that is either your own entity or outside of you and there's not an exchange of funds, you use an MOU, okay? If there is an exchange of funds, you could use an MOU or a contract depending on the situation. If you are contracting with your own entity, so let's say a 21st century program is contracting with CMP to provide snacks, then an MOU is what's needed, because even though there's an exchange of funds, it's an agreement within your own school system, within your own program. If you're a CBO and let's say you're a YMCA CBO and you're contracting with your own YMCA to provide swimming lessons, then it would be an MOU, okay, to pay for those swimming lessons. If it is if there is an exchange of funds between your organization and a different organization, like between a CBO and an LEA, or between either one and another entity or organization of some sort, and there's an exchange of funds, then you need to do a contract. Okay, that's the main thing to remember. All right, so again, I'm not going to read through these slides again. I do want to just mention really quick procurement about micro purchases. small purchases. I don't think anybody will have anything much more than a micro purchase or a small purchase, but just remember that if you're purchasing, anytime you're purchasing anything less than or equal to $10,000, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be a competitive, you don't have to necessarily get a competitive bid. But if you're spending more than $10,000 on something up to $250,000, then you do have to get price quotations from multiple sources. Okay. And there is a form for you to fill out with 21st Century for any expenditures where a purchase is more with one company, like within one purchase. Even if it's multiple items, if it's more than $10,000, then you were supposed to fill out a form for that. Okay, I think I'm actually, well, I don't know. I think I took that out, but there is a form. It's on the website for you to fill out if you're purchasing, if you're doing a small purchase, which is between $10,000 and $250,000, because that needs to be approved by us. Okay. That's just more contracts. Make sure there's nothing on here. I think this is all pretty much the same information. We do provide you guys with a template. There is a MOU template and a contract template. Please keep in mind, guys, that this is just a template, okay? You are supposed to, it is a Word document. You are supposed to change it to make it your own, right? So please make sure that if you're using our templates, that you are making sure that they look professional. So for example, Form 3 Sample Memorandum of Understanding, that Form 3 sample should be taken off before you have somebody sign that, okay? This is a legal document. So make sure that you're filling in all of the things that need to be filled in. There's like a paragraph in that I realized that a lot of people weren't doing. Like right here, purpose. The purpose of the MOU is to establish an agreement among the above mentioned parties concerning their respective roles and responsibilities. That is instructions to you. You are supposed to remove this paragraph and put in what the purpose of your program is. Okay. So read it and make sure that you are changing things that need to be changed. Now, however, there's some things in there that shouldn't be changed. And if you read the headers between each section, it will tell you what items can be changed and what items should remain because it's a federal requirement for it to be in there. Okay. So just keep that in mind if you're using those templates. And we highly recommend you use the templates or at least compare what you are using to the templates to make sure that it's got all the parts in there that are required by the federal government. Please remember your normal contract or MOU for your school system may not, unless they have one that specifically is for federal spending, then it's probably not sufficient. You need to make sure that your contracts, your MOUs and your contracts have all of the required federal provisions because you are spending federal funds. All right. So please make sure that you are doing that correctly. All right. That's just more of what I just said. Moving on, trying to hurry up. Okay. ES2s. You do need to continue to submit ES2s through the summer. And a lot of y'all need to be doing this during the school year too. I don't want to get on my high horse, but a lot of you are not submitting your ES2s monthly like you're supposed to be, and definitely not the quarterly. And the only reason why you haven't probably gotten a letter of concern is because I just haven't had a chance to go write them because I'm exhausted and there's not enough hours in the day to get it all done. But please, if your CSFOs are not, if I don't know who submits your ES2s, but if y'all are not submitting those ES2s monthly or at least by these quarterly due dates, please make sure those are getting in, because that's one of the things that the feds is really big on us for, is making sure that these are being submitted monthly, and that you're spending your funds in a timely manner. As a matter of fact, that's another thing that was in that. That was another thing that was in that session that I was in earlier from the feds, was talking about that's supposed to be part of our compliance monitoring, is whether you are spending your funds in a timely manner and submitting your ES2s in a timely manner. Not just that you're doing them, but that you're submitting them in a timely manner. So that's something we have to go back and tweak again. So please make sure you're doing that. During the summer, so everything from April 1st to June 30th should be turned in no later than August 15th, okay? But again, we request that you do it monthly, but definitely by these quarterly expenditure report due dates. All right, uploaded in eGap. I'm not sure what that question is, Kathy. Is that regarding ES2s? You can unmute yourself if you want to talk. ES2s, yes. So yes, there is a place in eGap for you guys to upload your ES2s. Yes, and that's supposed to be done monthly.
Okay, I was just wanting to know if that was where I could look for them at, and if they're not uploaded, I can.
Yes. So I don't know if it
person.
looks. Yeah, I don't know if it looks the same on y'all's computer as it does on ours, but the way I get to ES2s when I'm looking at your sites is on that bar on the left that has all the things. It'll say, I think it says ES2s. And you can click on that and it'll show you, I think it first shows you like your total expenditures, like your total amounts, but then and then there's like a place for you to click on ES2s and it'll show you like the ones that have been submitted for each site, the dates that they were submitted and like what their standing is and things like that, the amount that was submitted and all that. Yep. Okay, great question. All right, moving on. You do need to have a visible sign. Hopefully all of you have that, but I just wanted to bring it up because your summer program might be in a different part of the building or even in a different building than it typically is at your school. So make sure that wherever your summer program is located, that you do have a sign. It can be a nice sign. It could be a wooden sign or a, fancy sign, but it doesn't need to be like an electronic sign. Okay. That's a little above and beyond. But you can use 21st century funds to have an actual sign made, but it does need to be posted outside of where parents would come to pick their kids up if they needed to come get them early or something like that. Okay, you do need to have required handbooks in place. You should have a summer safety plan. There's links. Actually, these aren't linked. This was a picture. Sorry about that. But if you need examples of these, let us know and we can send those to you. But you should have a summer safety plan. You should have summer drills. Remember your fire drill, intruder drills, things like that. You should be doing those during the summer as well. Your staff handbook, parent handbook, it may be the same as what you use during the school year. It may not necessarily be specific to the summer. That's fine. But you do need to have, you do need to have at least a summer safety plan and those summer drills, like dates for those set up. All right, lesson plans and unit plans. We've been a little bit lenient on the lesson plan thing, trying to decide exactly how we want to do this. Right now, we're just basically saying we want you to have a plan for what you're doing, and you need to either do that as a daily lesson plan or as a unit plan, okay? But whichever one you use, it should have a basic overview and purpose. It should say what Alabama standards that activity is meeting, the RFA objective or state standard, what materials and resources you're going to be using, what prior knowledge the kids should have before doing the activity, or what prep activities you're going to do, how you're going to assess the activity to make sure it worked, what activities are going to be done, what follow activities are going to be done, and then the outcomes. How are you going to use how are you going to evaluate the activity that you did and whether your outcomes were met? Okay. Again, I would say if it was me, I would prefer to do a unit plan, but you can do whatever meets your needs the best. I will say for compliance monitoring, we will ask for some lesson or unit plans for you to submit those, and so you do definitely need to be doing them, but they're not as prevalent in the new compliance monitoring as they have been in the past. And once we have that finished, we will go over that with everyone, go through the new compliance monitoring, probably sometime before. We may do that. We may actually do that at Mega, but we will go over that with you guys soon. But they are something you are supposed to be doing. Okay, keep in mind you are supposed to do one service learning activity for all, and all students are supposed to be part of your service learning activities. Okay, all the time I see these objectives that sites have created that 20% more students will participate in service learning projects. Well, how is that? I don't understand, because all of your students are supposed to be participating in service learning projects throughout the year and then one during the summer. It's not supposed to be something that is optional. It's something that you're supposed to be, all of your students are supposed to be participating in. Okay. So, I understand that your summer programs are short, so don't come up with something too complicated, but you are supposed to do some sort of service learning project. And that service, you need to do like a service learning plan that goes with that project. And it should outline the 5 components. And so kids are supposed to be given the opportunity to investigate or discuss community needs. They should develop a strategy for change, implement their service activity, reflect on the effect of the project, and share what they've done and learned with their community. Okay. I will say in the new compliance monitoring, these are what we're going to be looking for. Okay. We want to see your service learning unit plans. We want to see photos, at least 5 photos of the service learning taking place. And we want to see where your program communicated to the school and or community about the project during and after its implementation. Okay, so social media posts, you sent home a newsletter, whatever the case may be, but you've communicated to the community, or at least the school community, families and things like that, that this service learning project is taking place and the results of that project. Okay, so those are things that we'll be looking for in compliance monitoring in the future. So please make sure you're doing those things. All right. You're also supposed to have one family engagement activity. All right. So this means that it's some sort of activity where the family is coming to the program. On the next slide, there's a bunch of family engagement examples. So we'll go over that in just a minute. But before I go to the next slide, I do want to say for compliance monitoring, this is what we're going to be looking for family engagement. Okay. We want to see that you regularly communicate with your families during your summer program. Okay. So whether that's through like your phone communication, I'm trying to think of what they're called. Gosh, I get one all the time. I'm trying to think of what it's called. I'm drawing a blank, which I do all the time. And there's several of them, but the apps on the phone where you send messages to the families, it could be through that. Yeah, Remind, Dojo, thank you. Anytime I try to think of something like that when I'm doing these, I draw a blank. But yeah, it could be that kind of communication. It could be that you're sending home a flyer. Long day, that's another one. Okay, I hadn't heard of that one. It could be screenshots of social media posts. Again, it could be one of these programs that you use to communicate, but you should be doing that throughout your program. Okay. And then for the actual family and engagement activity, we want to see a memo or invitation or announcement for that activity, the agenda, and sign-in sheets. Okay, that's what we ask for during monitoring. So just preparing you now that those are the things that you should be doing during your parent and family engagement. All right, here's some examples of parent and family engagement activities that you could do for your program. I'll give you a second to look at those, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we've already been doing this for an hour and a half, and I know you guys are ready to go. All right, again, I will send you these slides. All right, let's talk really quick about summer schedule. This is an example schedule. Guys, we're supposed to create a summer schedule when you did your RFA, but we understand that you had to do that like a year before the summer was ever coming. And so that was probably just, I guess, of what you were going to do during the summer. So if that one no longer applies, you need to update your summer schedule. This is one that you could refer to. This is one where the funds have been braided, actually, where they've actually got Kindergarten 21st Century and Kindergarten Literacy Act. That's where it's laid out. Okay. I think I actually may have the same one again. I'm going to talk about braiding in just a second. I don't know. It looks to me, it looks a little bit different, but it may be the same one. But this is where they've braided the funds and they've actually detailed like what activities are going to be paid for with Literacy Act funds and which ones are going to be paid for with 21st Century funds. So again, I'm sending you these slides and you're welcome to look at this and use it to kind of give you some inspiration of what your summer schedule should look like. But we do want you to make sure that it is in EGAP, because if we come out to visit or if the TAs come out to visit, we should be able to see that you're actually abiding by the summer schedule that you've told us that you're going to be doing. All right, we do encourage you to braid your funds and to try to find ways to combine your 21st Century program with your literacy and math camps. I think the first time that we had literacy and math camps, there was a lot of competition. It was hard to find teachers to do both. They were paying their teachers a lot more than 21st Century was paying theirs. It was, nobody was happy because the kids that were doing the literacy and math camps weren't getting to do the fun activities. They were just doing that heavy duty literacy and math instruction. They weren't getting to go on field trips and do fun things. And then you had the kids that were doing 21st Century that were, getting a lot of playtime. And anyway, it was just a kind of a mess. And so if you could figure out a way to work together to do one very high quality summer program, that's what we encourage you to do. Just be really careful about supplement, not supplant. Keep in mind that you need to remember what would have been provided to your students in absence of 21st Century. That still needs to be provided by your school system. So if your students would have been served by Literacy Act funds, if 21st Century didn't exist, they still need to be served by Literacy Act funds for those same types of activities. You can't say, okay, we're going to pay for the Literacy Act kids with that money, but we're going to do the same thing for the 21st Century kids, but just use 21st Century money for them. Can't do that, right? So 21st Century funds should be above and beyond what is supposed to be provided by the school system with other funding sources that they get. So just keep that in mind. And if you have questions about things, I don't want to spend too much time on it right now, but if you have questions, just feel free to reach out because it can get a little confusing and we want to make sure that you are not supplanting. Okay. All right. Next. This is just some examples of how you could braid funds for summer programming for elementary. You could use Title I funds to pay high quality science teachers to provide STEM instruction, mentoring counselors. You could use your ASAP, I think it says AMSAP, but I think that's supposed to be ASAP, sorry. ASAP funds. Also, no, I think that's math actually. That's the math funds to pay for highly effective math teachers and materials for tiered instructions in grades K through 5. You can use your Literacy Act funds to pay for your highly effective literacy teachers and materials for tiered instruction for grades K through 3. Then you could use your 21st Century funds to pay for your summer program logistics, like your transportation, administration, teachers' aides, materials for math, literacy, STEM, enrichment activities, field trips, that sort of thing. And then your CMP funds or CMP program to provide breakfast and lunches, okay? So that's just an example. Here's one for high school or middle. This one incorporates like your CTA Perkins funds. You can incorporate local workforce and career readiness skills classes into your summer program. Graduation requirement courses using local funds. So these may spark some ideas in you, okay? And I want to say this is probably the same. This is very similar to the example summer schedule where funds were being braided and may be able to see it a little bit better. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. But you're welcome once you get the presentation to check it out. All right, almost done. Keep in mind that you were supposed to distribute summer teacher surveys, even for summer programs, which absolutely makes no sense, but the feds still require it. So I think last year they just had them send it to the program teachers, the 21st century program teachers to fill out. But we do have to do summer surveys, summer teacher surveys, okay? So make sure that those are done in June. By June 13th, you have to flag your participating students for your summer program in Power School. After the 13th, and that this was last year's date, so it may even be different now, but in the middle of June, they lock everything down in Power School and they freeze everything. And if you did not have students march as 21st century prior to that time, I'm going to say June 13th, but it may even be a couple of days before then. If you don't have your students march as 21st century, when we pull data, it won't pull data on those students. So please make sure that all your students are marked as 21st century in Power School before June 13th for both your school and your summer program. And then also keep in mind that by the 15th of each month, your attendance must be submitted for the previous month if you haven't done so already. Hopefully you're doing it on a daily basis, but just make sure that you're getting that in. Easy reports. I don't want to spend too much time on easy reports, but I will send you these slides again. I'm not going to walk through these one by one because most of you probably know what you're doing in easy reports. But it's just a reminder that you do have to set up your summer programming, okay? And there's some instructions on these slides of how to do that. I don't want to spend too much time going through them, but it says whose responsibility to do what. So program director needs to be adding in your program dates for your summer, add in your activities, add any special events or field trips and parent activities into your easy reports, any holidays like the 4th of July, add additional users as needed. So all that needs to be set up preferably before your summer program starts. Okay. The site coordinator needs to enroll students into sessions, complete attendance daily, and certify the monthly attendance by the 15th of each month. Okay. You need to add your program staff. Your program staff may be different during the summer than it is during the school year. So this is instructions on how to do that. Again, I will send everybody these slides. Creating sessions and activities. Just keep in mind that, I don't know why there's bullets here, sorry. But sorry, I shouldn't have done that. Anyway, keep in mind that individual students cannot be enrolled in 2 sessions at the same time. So you can't have one kid in 2 sessions at once. And so, so what they suggest that you do is try to make sessions kind of grade specific and then look at the students and what they do on a regular weekly basis and map out their week without conflicts. Okay. Do keep in mind that meals and snacks should be created as activity category other. Okay. So because they won't be reported in 21 APR. So your meals and snacks, they need to be other when you set them up. All right. Here's just some more instructions on how to register students. Don't want to spend too much time on this because most of you probably already know how to do this, but you can refer back to these slides better than I can tell you, to be honest with you. You can enroll students by activity or by participant. So you can enroll multiple students into an activity at once, or you can enroll one student into multiple activities at once, however you prefer to do it. You do need to do your summer surveys. This explains how to do that. And this tells you how to do your attendance. Okay. All right. External evaluator. You should have an external evaluator that's coming out to visit your sites at least one time during your summer program and make an observation. They can use the OST observation tool, or the NIOST observation tool during that time. If your evaluators ask you, we're in the process of working on our evaluation documents and forms, hoping to have an evaluation template for summer programs created sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we'll get that to them. If worst case scenario, we'll use what we've done in the past if something happens and we just can't get it done. But the main change that I want to happen is that, and this will be for both summer programming and school year programming, is that evaluation is going, we're hoping that it's going to be done actually in Cognia now instead of as a big report. It'll be kind of, instead of being a big report, it'll be more like they go in and answer questions. The big reports are great and they're pretty and they have lots of nice fluff and information, but it's really, really hard to read a 90-something page report for 150 different sites and pull out the needed information to give us, to tell us what sites need, okay? And so we noticed that some other states actually do their evaluation reports in Excel instead of as a big, pretty, long essay style report. And so we consider doing that, but then Cognia has a new platform where we can actually, it's going to be kind of set up sort of like compliance monitoring, but instead it's just going to be a list of questions where they can go in and answer those questions and then enter in certain data. And the great thing about it is if we do it the right way, when it's done, you as a site should be able to push a button at the end and it will create a pretty report for you based off the answers to those questions for you to share out with the community. So we're working on that right now, but I can't guarantee that it's going to be done for this school year, but that is the plan. So hopefully we'll be able to get that to the external evaluators sometime in the next couple of weeks. Okay, when will Easy Reports be available for us to set up our summer programs? That is a good question. Off the top of my head, if somebody knows the answer to that, please feel free to type it into the chat. I know they normally have it set up before the summer begins, but I'm not exactly sure when they do that rollover. Okay, so Megan said she was told by Easy Reports that it would be May when they do it. So that sounds right to me. Sorry, I just haven't been doing. We used to have TPI do Easy Reports for us, and so I'm just not super familiar with Easy Reports. And Carla's been handling it, and she is not here this week, so I'm definitely not the Easy Reports expert. But yes, May sounds about right if you can get those set up. I know it's before summer, so that you can get those set up before summer begins. Okay. This is just going through the GEPRA measures. I'm not going to read this to you. Power School, this is just another reminder. Please make sure that you're flagging your students in Power School, okay? We're still working on trying to have that API set up so that your data will be automatically pulled over from Power School. Well, it's actually from state IT, but they get their data from Power School to Easy Reports. But a key part of that is going to be marking kids as 21st century in Power School. So if you're not able to do that yourself, please make good friends with the person at the LEA who can do that for you. Take them cookies, whatever you have to do. Make sure that they are able to mark those kids as 21st century, because it would eliminate a huge number of problems if everybody would do it, would make sure their kids were marked as 21st century in Power School. All right, I think that is it. These are just some educational resources that you can refer to. And what other questions do you guys have other than what you've already put in the chat, if any? I know that was a lot. Any questions?
No.
I can hear you, Judy.
I was just going to chime in. No.
I'm sorry. I know that was a lot. I promise I was trying to go fast and not ramble too much. Okay. All right. Well, if you don't have any questions, then you are free to go. Again, I will send you the presentation. We will send you the recording. We'll make sure that the recording is on the YouTube channel. But we'll make sure you have the presentation so that you can click on the links that are in it. And we hope everyone has a great rest of your school year and a great summer. We'll talk to you guys before the end, hopefully. But okay, there's a question, and so this is not about summer, but there's a question about carryover money. Is that still happening? So yes, I want to do a supplemental grant. The reason why I haven't done it yet is because last I checked, accounting was still allowing people to submit expenditures from FY25. And until I know how much money we have, I don't feel comfortable giving money out. I feel like we probably have plenty to give out, but it just makes me nervous to do that. And so I will check. I will try to check. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it this week because I have a major project due by the end of this week, but I will try to check very soon to see if everybody's gone through the FER process and if people are still being allowed to submit expenditures. They shouldn't be. I probably shouldn't say that, but um, expenditures should have been shut down December 15th, around that time, but I don't know why they're still being allowed to be sent in. But as long as that's happening, I don't feel comfortable giving out more money. But hopefully, I'll be able to do that very soon. I'm not exactly sure how much it will be and what it's going to be for, but we'll try to get some out. I know some people may have needed a little bit extra money for to pay their summer teachers. Summer programming, so I'll try to get that out to you guys as soon as possible if we're able to do it. But we'll try. I feel comfortable that we're going to be able to do one. Hopefully we'll be able to do it very soon because I know that the school year is almost over, but you still have until September 30th. So, we'll try to get those out for you guys so that you can get some more funding if you need it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, I'm going to end this recording. I think. Stop sharing the screen.